Hello and welcome to the Professional Media Presence podcast series. In this episode, Jašeková from Youth for Equality is joined by Ali Honaramiz, a project manager at Future Now Association and Europsky Dialog. Together, they explore the topic of how gamification empowers artists in the digital age and discuss the ways in which digital tools and game design can enhance artistic visibility and media presence.
Hello everybody, my name is Diana and I am representing Youth for Equality NGO that is a part of the PMP project. Together I am here with Ali and we are doing a podcast on the topic on how gamification empowers artists in the digital age.
Hi, my name is Ali. I'm a project manager for the Future Now Association and Europsky Dialog, an NGO here in Trnava. My experience in gamification is, personally, I consider myself a gamer and a game collector. And on the professional side, I write projects that have gamification elements in which I try to gamify concepts that are difficult, let's say, to do in the formal education or non-formal into games, into video games specifically. I've developed 3 video games so far through the NGO and 1 board game that was storytelling for youth work. All of these were done, of course, under Erasmus funds as well.
Thank you. And I would like to ask you now in the beginning that why do you think that gamification is relevant for artists aiming to strengthen their media presence?
Well, games are quite popular, especially lately in the indie, the independent market. There are many outlets and there's a lot of attention to visibility, especially when it comes to creating games. Games are not just simple products you come across. There's a lot of marketing involved in it. And game developers, game creators, artists that are involved in the game as well have been using more and more social media to promote themselves and work on many games as well. So I think it's a really good outlet to discover some great sound design artists that made some amazing sound effects or soundtracks for games. There are level designers that made some beautiful landscapes in which we don't, credit too much when we play. So I think the market has been growing a lot. Of course, we have also mobile gaming. We even have games on our TVs. And it's nice to pay attention on the credits because there you can see individually who created what. So I think gamification brought a big market for all types of artists, from people that design flowers or animations to people that design even the text, fonts. Even font artists are the unseen heroes sometimes.
And can you maybe specify a bit more that how can gamification help artists to navigate the complex world of digital media? That includes maybe recognize misinformation or managing their online presence?
Yes, well, the thing is, regarding managing the online presence, gamification, well, the process of gamification, if we can just unwrap that, would be putting game elements into daily life and into any topic, if it's about education or about personal growth. It is the element of rewards and challenges, the ability to simulate. So regarding media literacy, in that sense, there's a lot of content that developers and game design artists and game designers overall have to take into consideration in order to create the game. There is, let's say, the ethical part of it that has to be covered. Gamification also allows the ability to think in this more complex way. I think also increases critical thinking to some degree. So yeah, I think that would be more or less it.
Thank you. And actually, you mentioned just a while ago some game design elements that resonate well with the creative individuals, or you mentioned more in general. So maybe if there is something else you would like to add in regards with the artists, with creative individuals.
Games, yes, especially I would say the games have elements of rewards and challenges. I think is a really good incentive for creative individuals because they are almost like limitless challenges you can put for people to start creating or to solve a puzzle. Before, gamification, especially with rewards, was mostly give you stars or like a rating before, but there are now games that give you more achievements about doing some maybe mundane task. So I think it's quite challenging for new artists to think of new ways of how to make reward feeling even better. And another thing we don't talk much about gamification is the addiction part. So an artist now has to create something that is really appealing, that you want to play it again and again, but not get addicted to it, because then it's considered unethical. They are game artists, like the game artists and developers that make elements that are necessarily emotion provoking and addictive. And I would consider that unethical. You see those more in some flashy mobile games or in games where they're just very short. And then I think there are the ones that are a bit more creative and a bit more ethical, that create beautiful elements in games that are not addictive, let's say, do not cause any negative side effects. And the ability to recognize what is a good ethical game design and an artistic, let's say, input versus an artistic input that has bad meaning to it is a delicate process. Because on the one hand, you want your art, whatever that might be, to be replayed as much as possible and exposed, but at the same time, you want to keep your integrity, your artistic integrity, and not reuse things. There are artists now that really focus and promote original work versus reused AI sort of work. So in the whole process of gamification, I think this is an important and actually interesting topic. How do you make something really nice? How do you put your artistic, let's say, input to it, but also maintain your artistic integrity in order to still be like a good person, a good artist overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe could you provide some examples of the platforms where, or actually examples of the gamified platforms that enhance media literacy for artists?
Yes, there is one actually called A Fishy Tale, which is a gamified platform. It's more in a narrative storytelling that's created by artists, and it's literally to tackle misinformation and disinformation. So the player goes through a story that's beautifully drawn out and beautifully designed by the artists. And it's a quest essentially to solve, like to help you understand how to deal with misinformation through a gamified environment. Others would be Kahoot, for instance. Kahoot is one of those like gamified platforms. People don't think about it much. Quizzes, Get Bad News is also a beautiful game that has a lot of nice elements. And I do consider them really well designed. The artists that work on that made, for instance, the badges or the achievements did a great job to incentivize youth to play it again while learning. So those were, I think, were my go-to platforms.
I can imagine that they actually make the education more engaging and more interesting. Is there some more things that make it more engaging that you would like to mention right now?
Well, in these ones, they're maybe not that engaging. Maybe not engaging. No, they're meant to be engaging and played again and again, because the artists of the game, they could essentially allow you to repeat, and every time you repeat the game, there's a different story. Other elements, nothing comes to mind actually at the moment, but I'll keep that in mind.
And I would like to ask you also that what role do you see that gamification is playing in helping artists to adapt to new trends in communication and self-presentation?
Okay, so with artists, when you want to promote your work or when there's a game that you create, whether that being a physical or a digital game, there is a lot of work in disseminating that. You have to learn a lot of things. Unfortunately, people that study, when you study one thing specifically, that being in art or being in development, you're not taught that much to promote it. It is an awkward one, and I have friends of mine that started promoting their art, I think through Twitter a lot, and that was a big market for them as well. Or through Instagram now lately and TikTok. And it is a challenge. Not copying other artists is a challenge as well. But it is a learning process. I think that's really good for the creators and the artists themselves. There's a lot of small things to learn, like engaging your audience, what you need to post, posting enough that people want to maybe purchase more or follow more, but not giving out too much for free that can be misused. So I think this whole process is quite has a lot of questions and a lot of challenges that one might go through. But going through some of these big social medias, I think that's good. Patreon has also been really beneficial for the expansion of the audience, of learning how to make things, how to gather community. Gamification also allows the creation of a community too. One of the best things I learned with being in this field is that if you create intellectual property, if you create a fictional universe, fictional characters or world, the best thing you can do as an artist, at least from the people around me, the best thing is to create more and more games and more types based on this original thing. I was thinking another part was maybe this is the more commercial and popular, but the artist on League of Legends, they created intellectual property of characters and their stories and everything. They made a game, or the game was made anyway, and now they're going into shows, into animated shows, like on Netflix. And then that allows more people to get to know the game, and that the show wasn't made based on the game. It was a show with stories and plots and beautiful characters. But I was thinking about it actually today morning, that how many people are now even more inspired to go play the game, and then maybe, of course, expand into more things. So for me, the best advice also I would give is create something original, create a world, a character, a concept, and then build on that. Make many different games. It's okay. You can make shows, you can make merchandise. It all starts with something original at the base. And learning how to promote that, I think, is also really key. And it's also good that people follow different, let's say, courses on it, because it is an art in itself of how to promote your materials as well.
Can you tell me how might gamification support interdisciplinary collaboration between artists and educators in promoting media literacy?
Yeah, actually, that's a big, say, struggle I think we have, because artists have some part of the mission that they understand, and educators have the other part. So we were talking also with a panelist recently from Impact Games, Slovak, a non-profit organization that makes beautiful games on mobile and also on Steam, and it's for free as well. I'm not trying to promote them much, but I to get something. I think they're really cool. And they were saying, okay, we made a game about biology, for instance. So we have the developer that has the coding base, and then we have the artists that know how to draw, let's say, the body, but we don't know the concept of how to teach biology. So they, as artists and gamers, went and hired actually the help of two professors in biology. And they were, okay, explain to us how things work. So it really comes from both. We tend to think we're experts on some things, and then it's simple as just going and asking an expert. When we made a game about economic literacy, so my background is in finance and business, so I had, let's say, that background covered, but I still needed the help of a professor. So in that, let's say, partnership, we included two universities, one of them being UCM, and their economics faculty and other professors too. Then we also went with other people that were more educated in youth work and how to create, let's say, guidebooks and methodologies in that way. And then in our team we had artists that had no instance of, let's say, financial or economic training. They were dealing with concepts and they had to design things that was not known to them. And it's really, I think, in that spark, there's a beautiful moment where you have the artist that has all the capacity in being able to create beautiful worlds and elements, and you have the educator that doesn't know how to do that, but knows how to teach it. And it takes a really nice, delicate process of putting those things together. I think it takes a lot of communication skills for the educator to be able to translate in some way what the artist needs to create. So in like gamifying a concept, there is, I think what most people ended up doing is relating it to something. So you might have seen some games, even if you're not a gamer, or you like games, even you know how some things work, or how some movies work. So I just remember a lot of discussions like, okay, when I mean inflation, just think of it like this, imagine it like this. And then the artist took all of that input and then created like something amazingly accurate, I would have to say. And we're trying to show through different objects in that game for economic literacy. We're trying to show through objects the history and an economics term, for instance. Gamification also worked in how we try to build also a community, because I would say like proper teacher builds the sense of community within the field, and also the artists want to make a community on their art too. So putting them two together was a great decision, and every time it happens, it's really beautiful. And that's actually one of the drivers of me learning, because both people learned at the same time. The teachers also, the educators learn how important gaming is and gamification. They use it in their classrooms, challenges, small quizzes, quests. And then the artists learned more about the topic as well. So there's always an exchange of knowledge going on when you put these two people together, these two groups of people together.
There is a lot of interesting examples, projects, or situations that you described. Mm-hmm. And I would like to maybe ask that if there is any specific advice you would like to give to artists who want to leverage gamification tools to enhance their media literacy or professional presence.
So you should join. I think some of my first advice is joining a community that already exists. Gamers and artists use a lot of Discord, and Patreon also has its own community. YouTube has its own community. And then depending on what type of artist you are, you have your own community as well. I know a community of just animators. I know just a community of people that just design and do graphic design. But the point is to reach out. There's a beautiful competition, not a hackathon, a game jam, in which you have all types of artists and developers, and then in the festival or in the, let's say, conference, there is a task, how to make it. Or sometimes it happens even online. And you have this task, make a game that includes this. And then people go together, they create something, complete strangers. They create something and then they give it to someone else, and it goes on and on like this. And you just add and add to this story. I love game jams. I love watching them because you see people being incredibly creative. But that happened from a community. I have 5 friends. I have 50 friends, or not friends, or at least people I know online. I go to them and I ask them and I see what they created. And I try to help others first. I think that's also how I started in this sense. And I think many other people too. It's just helping out a bit. Then, if you are an a level environment designer or an artist, just create something. Create any type of assets. I know people that started by just creating a 3D flower, and they put it up on a marketplace, because there are a lot of marketplaces for this, and they started a career like this. We tend to shoot for perfection, and we will get there, but no one, I don't think anyone just like immediately released something that was perfect. And if it released and we thought it was their first creation, it probably wasn't. It probably was a lot of repetition behind the scenes. So my advice is, whatever you create, it's still art, and it's still valid for people to see, and also valid for you to get feedback on. As I was explaining in the final conference like 2 days ago for gamified digital youth work, in a sense, they asked me, so what advice would you give to gamers, to people that want to develop things, to artists? If you create, let's say if you're a video game designer, or you want to be an aspiring one, just create. If you create a room with a little object that moves around and it's black and white, that is still a game for me. You've created, that is art, because you sat down, you thought about it, you designed it, you implement, you brought it out. So whatever you create after some process, put it out there. It's still valid, and it can only get better from that. I think that would be my advice. Just create.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Finally, I would like to ask you, what are some beginner-friendly resources or platforms for artists that are interested in exploring gamification?
I think, and this is now maybe a hot topic or maybe controversial, there are some people that do not believe on references or reference design. This is more maybe to the people that reference pictures, and when you start designing or drawing, you usually have something to look at. And then, like, okay, I see this picture of a bird or a face, I will try to replicate it. That's a really good way of starting. And I think that's a way of starting for a lot of things. Getting yourself into platforms where there are a lot of games or gamified concepts, you do get inspired. Replicating something tests actually if you're able to do that. It's a way of like learning in a safe way. You know the final outcome, you just have to get to it or reverse engineer it. So visiting platforms such as Steam, for instance, which is my favorite for games, it has a library of games and educational games and creative games and artistic games. And playing those, you just have to be open to understand what is the thing that you enjoy the most in the game. Take that and do it for your own topic. For instance, I like games that allow me to create anything in the world. We call them open world, or sandbox is a term used by gamers, that it's essentially an environment in which you control everything around it. Whatever is placed, whatever is drawn there, I like that element. So I would like to use that in my game, or even in my daily life, or in my educational part, to give them all the materials and tell them the world is endless. In that sense, Steam has some of the games, but not all of them. There is another nice website in which we also publish there. It's called itch.io. And there you will find games that are completely independent. They are people that had extra time and had a dream. They're artists that wanted to create something and didn't want to go through a publisher, because Steam, for instance, you need to have some criteria met. You need to pay, I think, €100 to release a game. It's really good if you do. There's a lot of marketing tools inside, but it's a bigger process. Itch.io, for instance, is a completely open website that has games from everyone, and everyone has like different topics they want to cover. They're small games, and you can see actually how they get inspired. Then I would say then YouTube actually is a great source. Most of what I've learned is, not most, but a large part is from YouTube itself. Finding tutorials, following through is a great way of learning how to do things. Pinterest can also be a great source of inspiration for artists. I know some of our designers in the NGO that I'm working with, they go to Pinterest and they type what they need, and then they get inspired to do something. So there are a lot of game concepts there. Another part is if there are live events for game jams, which usually are on Twitch, the channel that online streams, join, because there are literally people that get together every now and then. You can just Google also like which game jam is the next one, or go on Twitch, and there you have people. You can sit down on your couch and see people create a game from scratch, and you will see all the process, from the artist designing how the game is going to look like, from the game designer designing how the game is going to be played, to the developer. So you can firsthand see from scratch what you need to do, what kind of team you need, and also get inspired. One big issue I have sometimes is thinking, okay, I want to talk, let's say, about mental health in games. And there are some games that do that, but every game does it in its different way. And the more I visit these communities and the more I browse through these stores, the more inspired I become. So these become really good things. So I would start with Steam if you're just thinking generally how games look like, what kind of art they're using, because some people use photorealism and they make the most amazing realistic looking graphics. And you can start with pixels, like pixel art. It's something that is becoming even more popular, even though it was older games. They look like small pixels, like in Pac-Man or in Mario or in Minecraft even. But it's picking up a lot of pace. So you have a whole spectrum of tools you could use. There is a lot of free assets that artists can use, and I think this is a way they start. You can go to the Unity store, which is a game engine, and there are a lot of assets there that are for free. Unreal Engine has also a lot of games, a lot of assets that are created for free. So let's say you're a level designer, so you're creating the environment of the game. There's nothing stopping you right now in creating a full game on free assets. And if you go to these ones, you can find them. And you go to YouTube and you find a creator that you like, they're probably going to link you to some free materials that you can also see. So there is a lot of resources available, and even more and more. If you use also AI, then that's also an open possibility. But I would start from there. So from itch.io, from Steam, Pinterest, YouTube. There are some beautiful courses on EDX, on Coursera, Skillshare. There are some nice master classes as well. Those, of course, are some paid options, but the free ones I think I mentioned in the beginning. You can start from there. There are some game engines that you can create a whole video game for free. There's another one actually I'm planning to go to actually create a project with. It's called RenPy. If you're into storytelling and you don't want to focus on crazy game mechanics and like overshoot your imagination, RenPy, it's REN apostrophe PY. It's a beautiful game that has a community of a lot of artists because it's very visual based and audio, not that much fancy animation. It's more, I think, created by artists that want to share their story through games. And the game aspect of that is that you can play it again and again repetition. There are challenges, there's quests, but it really relies on visual part and audio part. So again, the visual artists and the audio artists are having a great time, and you don't need to use a lot of coding. Because also, like myself, I don't code, I don't develop, but I can go into RenPy and create a game, which is maybe a story that I've heard or want to do, and it's completely free. And there are a lot of examples that you can follow. There's a library of games created, and you can open any game, play it, and I think you can even export it for phones. So RenPy for me is one of those nice engines, and a really good resource for any upcoming artist, any type of artist as well. And it may be your way to get into a gamification and an overall art creating.
Thank you.
Of course.
You mentioned a lot of things, and I found them really inspirational and interesting and useful for me, but I believe that for our audience and artists as well. So thank you very much for that. And so thank you for coming, for your presence in this episode, and looking forward to another meetings with you and to another episodes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for listening. The Professional Media Presence project is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union. Make sure to follow the updates on our social media, Instagram and Facebook, and visit our website pmpproject.eu. Stay tuned for more episodes.